today I want to run you through how I installed TimberTech IRX railing system, Impression Rail Express otherwise. Two tools I'm going to be using for this installation is the level jig, 3-inch level jig. All my posts are going to be 3 inches. And then I've got a post jig pre-drilling template that I've found is really nice for getting your posts exactly where you want them to go. So I'm going to walk you through how I do it today. And then I'm also going to show how to do specifically a drink rail installation if that's going to be your type of installation. Here is the deck that I'll be installing the railing on. It's a low level deck, so you probably wouldn't need a railing, but we decided to go with a railing on this one anyways. I've got all of my blocking in place before I got all this done. So I have 6x6 blocks of pressure treated right where I need to put my posts. They're about 1 foot long, so they give me plenty of meat to go into, and I won't have any issues with that. It's going to wrap around here, and it's going to end right here, and then there's going to be a small stair rail section that goes down there, and yeah, I've got a 6x6 solid piece of blocking underneath there as well. So once you're at the point where you're ready to install your railings, I would suggest getting your miter saw set up like this. I like to use these adjustable sawhorses to create a level, nice flat place to lay the panels out. Otherwise they get a little bit hard to handle, especially when you're working alone and you're trying to make nice and tight cuts. So this is one way to do it. I've done another way where I installed 2x4 wings that came out here and supported it. I have another video of that. I'll link that below. First thing I'm going to do is get everything out of the packaging, make sure that there's no manufacturing defects. I always order a little extra to make sure. I did actually have to put one out because the powder coat was not so nice. So take a look at your pieces, make sure they're all looking good before you install them. Now, where you lay out your posts relative to the edge of the deck is going to be important because you want to make sure that those lags go down into some good framing material. So on this particular deck, I have a 1/2 inch overhang of the composite, and then I have a 1 inch composite deck board skirting. So the edge of the deck is 1.5 inches back from here, and I'm going to add 3/4 of an inch so that to the outside lag screw so that hits the rim board and is nice and secure. So I'm going to use my Pica Dry pen with the white marker. The reason I like to use this Pica Dry is that it wipes off really easily. Once you know exactly where it's going to go, I'm going to pre-drill these holes with a 1/8 inch bit. And all I was going to do is just going to mark it. From there on, you're going to go ahead and lay out your posts. I like to figure out where my end posts are and then measure the center point of that, put the post in the middle there, and just make sure that how you're laying your post out, it looks good and it works within the length of the panels, because an 8-foot panel is not actually 96 inches. It's meant to be 96 inches with the posts accounted for, so just be careful on that. Now, if you're going to be running a drink rail on top of these, you're actually going to be cutting down these standard 39 and something inches posts down to 36 7/16. Now that is measuring from the bottom plate to your cut. If you want to give yourself a little sanity check here, you can cut a piece of this. This is going to sit down on that clip like so. And then at the top, you're going to have one of these universal snap covers. You want your cut of the post to be flush with the top of the snap cover, because what's going to happen is your deck board is going to run directly on top of that, and then you'll have these drink rail clips that fit on and screw up into these holes from underneath and up into the panel through these. Now what I like to do is I like to set up a stop block here, butt your tape measure to your blade, measure back. What that allows me to do is repeatedly cut posts at the same length each time and do it efficiently. Once you got all your posts cut and laid out, you're going to go ahead and install your clips. So now that I've got the bottom clips installed on all of these, I'm going to go ahead and install the lag screws. And then once I have them all in place, I'm actually going to plumb them by backing off the lag screws and shimming them as necessary. But I like to get them in place first, and then it makes that a lot easier to do. Make sure you pre-drill your holes with 3/16 drill bit or whatever fits the fasteners that you're using. I check the square of these as I go. You want to make sure that your posts are all nice and square so that your panels and your railing all meet nicely. You can use a rubber mallet when the fasteners are mostly tight but not all the way down to slightly adjust things if you need to. Alright, so now that I've got all my posts in the location they're going to go, I'm going to go through and I'm going to plumb the end posts. So that post, this post, that post, and obviously the stair post. I'm going to plumb those posts, and then these posts I'm actually going to, I'm going to plumb this way, this one, but then I'm actually going to get the top in line using a string line between these two posts, because the most important part is that the top of the railing is straight. That's going to catch your eye a lot more. Same thing here. So this post I'm going to plumb this way, and then string line straight along that way. That way the top of the railing is nice and straight. So once you've got all your posts in place, the next thing you're going to do is plumb them up. I like to use these composite shims. They come color coded so you know which thickness they are. 1/16, 1/8, makes it easy. And they come as thin as 1/32, which is really nice for fine tuning posts. Well, that doesn't need to go anywhere. Okay, so that needs to go that way. So if I need to tilt it that way, I'm gonna loosen up these two back screws and then shim it, tighten it down, check it, and continue that process. So what I'll do is I'll tilt it back and I'll shim under until it actually is a little bit leaned that way, because when I tighten these down, it's going to compress the shim a little bit and it's going to actually pull it back into level this way, or into plumb. I'm just going to tuck that underneath and then tighten it down and see how it looks. Beautiful. That's exactly where I want it. And it feels nice and sturdy. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to cut that away right at the base. That little scratch that I made in the composite there, again, is going to be hidden by the post skirt as well. So I've got the end posts all plumbed up, and then these intermediate posts, I'm going to level them plumb them up this way, and then this way I'm going to bring them to the string so that the top of the posts is nice and straight. As you can see, these posts are out. I'm going to bring them into that line so that when you look down this railing, all of that's nice and straight. And then this way, it needs to be plumbed this way so that the panels can be all cut to the same dimensions, measuring at the bottom, because the bottom's not going to move. All right, so once you got your posts all plumbed up and aligned, everything's looking nice and straight. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to measure and cut your panels. Now, two ways you can do this if you just have a tape measure. Always measure at the bottom. So, and I've got 51 and a 1/16 here. So I actually like to cut mine exactly. They recommend cutting an like a 1/8 or a 1/16 short, but I found that leaves too much of a gap, and I like to make everything tight. So I would rather cut it exactly, try to test fit it, and then shave off a little if I need to. That way there's no gaps. Now, my preferred method for measuring the distance is actually to use a laser distance measure, but my batteries died, of course, so tape measure it is today. So when I'm cutting my panels, I like to actually put the top rail, or in this case, because I'm doing a drink rail, I'm going to be putting the snap cover on. I like to cut all of it at once. That way you get your cuts all aligned and you don't have to make more cuts. So a little more efficient. So I'm going to look at my panel and I'm going to look at the total length and see where it lands, because you want to land where your baluster spacing is even on each end. If you look in the middle, 35 and 7/8 for this one. I'm working on 71 and 3/4 plus here. I'll notice it's right in the center of a baluster if I put it right about there. And so that means I'll have about 2.5 inches on either side. And so that's what I'm going to go for. If it didn't work out well, if I was like hitting a baluster, then I would instead put that centered on the center of baluster. But you can see that doesn't work out well. It would land in the middle of a baluster or something like that. So you'll have to see what your spacing is. Are you going to center it on the center between the balusters or center on a baluster? Now the spacing between balusters is 3 and 7/8. So 2 minus 6/16. That'll be the center of the space between the balusters. So I'll mark that. Right there. And then I'm going to line up my center mark with that center mark. End up with that. Right there. Then I'm going to come over, measure my cut on this side. And then I've got 71 and 3/4 plus. Right there. So now for the other side, I'm going to measure off this baluster that way, cut that, and then I'm just going to measure the panel over to my second cut. I'm not going to measure off the baluster to that one. That way the length of the panel stays consistent. So once you've got all your panels cut, you're going to go ahead and take off the bottom and top panel cover, whether that's a universal panel cover or the top rail. That way you can install the panels and screw them into the clips. When you're doing a drink rail installation, a good practice to do is get a little piece of this universal snap cover, and when you're getting the panels in, pop that on there and make sure that all lines up. Because you want that deck board to ride directly on the post and not have a gap here, and also not have a gap here. So if it's a little bit low, you can actually bump this up and then screw it in, and that'll secure it at the right height. And this is just kind of a sanity check, so highly recommend that. So I got the panel and the clips. I'm gonna make sure the panel's down tight and tight to the post. I'm gonna start screwing these into the clips. So now that you've got the bottom clips in, you're going to go ahead and use that jig, pop that on there, and that's going to center the panel. Pop a clip in, push that all the way in, make sure that the panel is nice and tight, and then you're going to go ahead and screw that clip into the post. Okay. And then you're just going to screw the panel to that clip. And then do the other side. So whenever I'm working with either the black or the dark bronze railing, I like to actually spray paint the heads of the screws that go up into the drink rail from underneath. They come stainless steel, shiny chrome, and I want them to blend in. So I use the Rust-Oleum high performance enamel. It's a nice fast dry, and it's quite a durable finish, and nice to use. What I'll do is I'll put them on a piece of plywood and I'll slope it so that the heads will all tend to face this way. That way when you're spraying, you can get all the heads at once. So here's a little mock-up of what the railing is going to look like when you're going to be putting on a drink rail. So here is my baluster. Here's my panel, right? I've got my top snap cover on there. What's going to happen, you're going to get a drink rail clip. This is going to fit on underneath, like so. These pre-painted tech screws are going to go through these holes here into the bottom of the panel. And then these lath screws, stainless steel lath screws that they give, I paint these, and then these are going to go through these holes into the bottom of the deck board. And you can see they will not penetrate past it, so they won't show on the surface. Everything's hidden underneath. That said, I still like to paint these to match, so they're just less visible. You're going to want to use a full thickness board. The scalloped boards are not going to work well with this system. You're going to overhang this 1.25 inches on each side. So 3-inch posts, 5.5-inch deck board, 1.25 inches on each side. Once your panels are all installed, you're going to go ahead and install your drink rail clips. These are going to be installed at the ends, and then every 2 feet on center, approximately 2 feet on center or less. So 6-foot panels will use 4 clips. 8-foot panels will use 5 clips. I like to pop my clips in place on top, mark these out, and then just go install all of them. And then you're ready for installing the drink rail. You don't want to overdrive them, as it'll deform the drink rail clip. Just snug them up. So once you've got your drink rail clips in, you're going to get these composite deck boards on top, or in this case PVC, and you're going to screw them in using the lath screws into the deck board itself. If you're butting into any solid surfaces, leave a small gap. So this is PVC decking. Is this AZEK weather teak? And one nice thing you can do with PVC decking, because it accepts glue really well, is you can use CA glue, cyanoacrylate, super glue, and you can get this miter nice and tight. What I like to do, especially because these boards are subject to expansion and contraction, especially long ones, is I'll also do some stainless steel pocket screws. I use a Kreg jig for that, and for this particular one, I don't do the 2 screws like this. I actually do 1 on each side, centered, so that when you look underneath, you don't see that pocket screw hole sticking out. If you look real carefully, you can find it, but it's really well tucked under there. So, a little tip for making sure that this miter stays good for years to come. And then the next thing is you're going to install these support blocks. I like to support any section that's longer than 4 feet. I like to put 1 under 6-foot sections, and you may have to order a few more. You may want to put 2 under 8-foot sections. I've noticed that putting just 1 under an 8-foot section still leaves a little bit of more wiggle room, a little more flex in the top rail than I'd like. So you may have to order a few extras. Make sure to account for that when you order your deck railings. Now, these support blocks are going to push up a bit, and they're supporting the mid-span of this. So what I like to do is I actually like to sight down the board, see where it may need to get bumped up a little bit if it's sagging, and then if it is good, and if you put one of those underneath and it makes it hump, I will actually cut down the bottom of the support block to where it'll just plane out nice and flat. So when you're laying out these support blocks, basically what I do is I find what is approximately the total length, divide that by half, about 64 here. So 32 lands me right in the middle of this. So I like to either center it on the center of a gap or directly underneath a baluster, centered on the baluster. So once you get that, lift up this and put your support block in place. And then what you're going to do to fasten this is you're actually going to put a composite screw on the inside of this block and leave it sticking up a little bit. So I like to mark the outside of the block like so. Then just take that out. You got that. And I'm actually going to put the screw right there. and right there, because you have to account for a little bit of thickness of the wall of this, and then the width of the head of the screw. So what that does is it just keeps the bottom of this from moving sideways, and then you'll put your tech screw with the color matched head through this into the bottom here. So when you install these screws, you're going to probably leave them about 1/8 to 1/4 inch up. I like to drive them in at an angle. That way that if I need to back them out, I can actually widen basically how wide the screw is, so that I can get it tight to the inside of these. That way there's no rattle. If you have a second-hand kind of spreader like this, it makes it easy because you can just pop them in under there, lift this up. If you don't, you may have to work a little bit harder, but it's super handy if you have it. So once you have it set right, the bottom should feel fairly snug. Shouldn't want to wobble around much at all. And then you install these tech screws. And here is the finished product. Keep those cuts nice and tight.